All right, everybody, we're here for the public information meeting for the alley reconstruction for the area north of Main, in between Main and the Fox River, from 4th Street to 3rd Street. So introductions, we've got 4 people here from the city of De Pere. I'm Eric Rakers, city engineer. We also have Scott Thorson, director of public works, Dan Lindstrom, Development Services Director, and Quason Shaw, Community and Economic Development Specialist. So the purpose for the meeting is to kind of give you a project improvement overview along with some assessments. There will be some charges for 2 different pieces in this project. We also want to talk about project timing and impacts, not only for this project, but some associated with the upcoming WISDOT Main Avenue reconstruction. And then we're going to talk a little bit about a city assistance and facade grant options that are out there. And then ultimately, we want to have open discussion and questions with some input we're looking for from residents and property owners and businesses. Now, at the time that we're recording this, we don't have a lot of participants, but we do have Holly, and we appreciate you being here, Holly. So after, if you have a chance to review this, there will be information on our email addresses and telephones, so you can get a hold of us depending on what particular questions you may have. So what we're looking at is the reconstruction of the alley, as I mentioned. Again, north of Main, south of the Fox River, from 4th to 3rd. In addition to that, we are looking at improvements to 4th Street, north of Main, and also the Hicks Square parking lot, or 3rd Street extended. So there's kind of 3 different parts to the project. One of the big things we're going to be talking about in a little bit is when we say reconstruct the alley, what does that mean? There's a couple different options out there based on the amount of right-of-way available, because there is not a lot of right-of-way. And so we're looking for input from everybody on what they see this alley being, but also how do they use it? Do you use it for deliveries? Do you use it for customers, strictly parking? What ways do you use it? And then also in conjunction with that, are you looking at improvements? But for this project, again, we're going to be talking about how far, what kind of alley improvements are we doing? At a minimum, we're looking at a 12-foot alley reconstruct, because that is our right-of-way. And on the map, you can see it's a little blurry, but the ROW, that's the existing right-of-way. We got a fairly wide right-of-way on 4th Street, but once you get into the alley itself, we have a 12-foot right-of-way. And then you get out to 3rd, there's some additional area that's city property out there. In addition to the alley reconstruct, we will be doing some utility improvements. Now, many of you familiar that a couple years ago, we did line the sanitary sewer main, which is we inserted a pipe inside of it. We had to, it was cured in place. We appreciate everybody at the time working with us, because there were times you couldn't use your business or use your toilets and things like that, but we did get that done. But as part of this project, we are looking at potentially replacing or doing lateral work, which is the pipe that runs from the sewer main to your building. In addition, there is storm sewer back here that may need some work, but we are also looking at adding storm laterals to the project. And those are pipes that are run from the storm sewer. And I should clarify, on your map, the sanitary is shown in green and the storm is shown in red. But we are looking at adding storm laterals to get into your buildings, so you can hook up things like roof drains, sump pumps, things like that. That is something that is assessed for, and we will be talking about that in a little more detail. We do not have set rates at this time, but we will be talking in more details about that. But that is also included in the project. Now, taking a look at the sections or viewing down the street, we've got a couple different ones, and the A, B, C, and D designate the locations of these upcoming pictures. But we're going to show you what we're dealing with from a right-of-way standpoint. So section AA is looking down 4th Street, fairly wide. But section BB is one of the first sections behind the old library, viewing down the alley. And you can see our 12-foot right-of-way is showing the approximate location in black. really close to the curb along the old library and extending out into the pavement. So if we look at this as a strictly reconstruct for only 12 feet wide, you can see there's a lot of pavement we're not touching as part of the project. And, again, some of these we have lease agreements and things with the paper mill for parking, particularly along here. But when we get farther down, we don't have any easements or things for the parking on the south side of this alley. Going down to the next, we're farther down mid-block, and then also when we get near the end of the mill towards the river. But again, you can start to see the right-of-way lines up pretty close to the backs of some of these buildings, extends partway out into the alley 12 feet. In fact, the storm sewer where it's shown, if you go in the back where there's an inlet back there, that is outside of the easement or outside of our right-of-way. And there's a lot of pavement between our alley and your buildings. So really the scope of this project is going to be dictated by the type of input we receive from the property owners and the businesses. As I mentioned, we're going to be asking some questions. How do you use this? Are you looking at improvements in the future that maybe you're going to have outdoor seating or things like that? Are you looking for pedestrian facilities? Are you looking for better lighting? And all those things come with pros and cons. For us, if we're going to put pedestrian facilities, we can't fit them in a 12-foot right-of-way without impacting the ability to drive. So we would need easements and agreements and things like that. And when we talk a little bit about dates, how elaborate this project gets may dictate how quickly this project goes. So those are some of the things that we wanted to talk about today. Now, so I mentioned a little bit that we are talking about also storm improvements and assessments. So what we would be looking at is improving the storm, which I talked about runs in this low area, and then extending storm laterals towards your property. How far we would have to work out with the property owners, but those things are assessed for. And we want to present those up front so there are no surprises. An assessment for the storm sewer, we only assess for the new storm sewer, if we have to put new storm sewer in, and or the storm laterals. So if you only have a lateral, you've got storm sewer in front of your property, we would only assess for the storm lateral. If your property is already connected to the storm sewer somewhere, either behind the building in the alley or in front on Main, because there is storm sewer on Main, you would have no assessment. We would not replace the lateral as part of the project if it's in good condition, and we would not charge you for it. That's something that if you want to coordinate with staff as this project starts to move forward and we know which direction we're going and how quickly it's being constructed, we can work with you and determine if you're hooked up or not. So that's something we can work with you on. Now, as far as the storm assessment payment goes, with storm assessments, we have a couple different options out there. When the project occurs, at the end of it, say for instance, it went in 2025. At the end of the year, when the project is done, we would send you an invoice. At the time the invoice is sent out, if you want to pay it in full without any interest, you have to pay it within 30 days. If you don't want to do that, there are payment plans. We have a 5-year payback option, 5 annual payments. Now, the other situation with this assessment is there's a long-term payback option. If you choose not to hook up to the storm lateral and your building does not create icing problems from roof drains or sump pumps, we do not mandate hookup. So if you don't hook up, you have up until 25 years to connect at the time the invoice is issued or when the building is sold, whichever occurs first. There's really an extended period before you'd have to pay back those assessments. With that being said, if you chose to take one of those routes where you don't want to pay this back for an extended period of time, we do charge interest for 10 years. But then after that 10-year period, interest stops accruing. And the interest rate is based on what the city is paying 1% above that at the time the assessments are levied through the public hearing. So that's how we handle the storm assessments. But with that being said, we have not calculated the storm assessments. We just want to let people know this is something out there. Is this a $10,000 cost? No, it's probably closer to the $3,000 to $4,000 range, but we won't know that until we get closer to the project. So that is one of the two costs associated with the project. And before I continue on and hand it over to Scott to talk about dumpsters, because we are proposing a dumpster improvement with this project, I want to emphasize that the portion for the street improvements is not assessed. The sanitary lateral improvements that are made are not assessed. And then in a little bit, we'll also talk about water, because the water are located out on Main. Those are not assessed either. So really, there's two assessments we're dealing with this project, the storm, and the one that I'm going to turn over to Scott now to talk about, which is the dumpster enclosure construction. So Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. So what we're talking about on this alley project, over the last 6-7 years, the city is actually in the downtown areas installing dumpster enclosures. This one right here is in the alley, a brand new alley we constructed recently between 3rd and 4th. I call it Cobblestone Alley because it was part of the Cobblestone project. What the intent with these enclosures is we want to get rid of the unsightliness of the existing polycarts. We've installed these enclosures. Our very first one we did was on a Nicolay Square parking lot. That was kind of called the pilot project. So those properties that are on the south side of Main between 3rd and 4th, they've been using that enclosure for, I believe, 6-7 years. What happens is, we build the enclosure and then we assess the property owners on an annual basis depending on their uses. We'll talk about that in a minute. So our goal, this is, I believe, Mill Alley will be our 5th area we installed an enclosure. We have one right now at Nicolay Square. Our second one we installed was Marquette Square. The third one, as you saw in a picture, was the alley between 3rd and 4th. We actually are in the process and actually had information meetings earlier this year. We'll be constructing an enclosure on Mission Square. That's an area where actually Walgreens is. And like I said, then we're proposing this over the next couple of years when that actually does occur. Basically, what will happen is when we install that enclosure, we'll contract collection services with our private hauler. The city will administrate the garbage recycling collection. Right now, I believe it's twice a week in most of the places that we have. We also look at installing the enclosure be large enough. If you're in an area where maybe a bar or something that has needs container, would actually construct that on it. Basically, we do have is, for example, if a property owner wants to opt out, that means they have the ability to have services and store either carts or dumpsters on their own property. So basically, they opt out, and then the city does not collect from it. It will be required to actually, go private. An example, Nicolay Square area, I believe Pasquale's, for example, is one property owner. They have enough room that they opted out. I believe also the movie theater, for example, on the Marquette Square, they opted out. They don't need to. So what will happen as part of this process, as Eric and his team are planning, I'll be working with them. We got to figure out where a strategic location to install the enclosure. Potentially, it's going to most likely require a loss of parking stalls. I can tell you, in every instance where we install them now, there was 2 to 3 stalls that were lost. The toughest part is getting agreements where we can put it, what'll work, and then the issue is people actually, if it's on one end of the parking lot versus another or even the middle. There was a lot of debate, for example, in Nicolay Square. We were looking at 2 enclosures because of the bars and everything that were there. Where it went is pretty much behind was seated the meat place there, market. And actually, it came to an agreement with all the property owners there because at one time there was a business there that was a bar at the corner of 4th and Main. They had to haul their garbage and walk it all the way over to that enclosure. So there is quite a distance. An example right now on Marquette Square, we use George's. They walk it all the way to the north end of the parking lot. So there'll be some sacrifices on that. So what will happen as we move forward and it gets constructed, we will have to revise our ordinance. We have an ordinance particularly for this type of application for a downtown area. You can see right now what we have up there is Nicolay Square, Marquette Square, and the 400 block of Main. We'll be adding Mission Square later this fall. And then what will happen as part of that ordinance, it basically, the Director of Public Works has to assess an annual assessment that goes in your property tax. For this project, we don't know when that'll be because it all depends on the project. I'll give you an example. On Mission Square, it's not going to be done until probably late summer, early fall. So really the services won't start till 2025. So they'll go on our 25 property taxes. So we kind of got a little taste on the next slide. Kind of gives you an idea what the assessments will be annually. There's really two different types of assessment. Those that have an office space. Now everything, you know, and you might have a parcel that has maybe 3 or 4 uses, and say one use is a bar, well then, or a drinking or a restaurant, then you get the larger assessment. In this case, for 2024, for those that going out this year, you know that the highest is 98, 93.53. And if you're an office building, I believe such as you are, Ellie, you know, because I think O'Connor has it on the south side. Their assessments is 160, 198. In fact, I believe she's on this one for the Nicolay Square. So what will happen is as we build more of these enclosures throughout the city, it all goes in one pool. So everybody's going to be paying the same assessment, whether you're on the east side, the west side, you're in Mission Square, Marquette Square, Mill Alley. Basically, I throw all these parcels together, and then you know everybody's paying the assessment. Annually, I update them because sometimes I'll give you an example. If a restaurant bar moves out of a parcel, I say a parcel because a building like on the south side of Main between 3rd and 4th, there may be a restaurant bar, but there's also a couple of apartments or even office space. So it's basically what use, office or a restaurant type bar. So there are some of these establishments that, okay, they change hands. They're no longer a restaurant type bar. There's an apartment, or they might be a gift shop. Well, then they actually will get a lower assessment. And then, like you see up there, but if a parcel is on the lower assessment and somebody wants to put a coffee shop in, all of a sudden they go to the higher assessment. And that's the reason why we evaluate it yearly. Unfortunately, I had one come in 6 months after the fact. Well, I'm not a restaurant bar anymore. So unfortunately, you pay that assessment the entire year. We evaluate it in the fall, and that'll occur. Typically, I send a preliminary out in case sometimes they may miss it and say, oh, no longer a restaurant bar. I take a look, verify that, and we adjust it. This is what you see, for example, one on the tax bill for these properties in 2024. So, you know, Mill Alley, all the parcels are there. Eventually, they see something similar to that.
All right. Thanks, Scott. So we're going to take a step towards the timing of the projects now. So we just talked a little bit, you know, again, in real general terms about kind of the scope of the project, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that, and the improvements with the dumpster enclosure and the 2 charges that are out there for this project. But next, let's talk project timing. So quick overview. We've got a couple different projects, which is the catalyst for when we want to get this alley done. Really, we're looking at this alley either in a 2025 or 2026 timeframe. 2025 would be if we just go with a 12-foot reconstruct on the pavement and we don't get to pedestrian facilities, or there are not a lot of other amenities added, and we don't need to get easements, because as soon as we started having to get easements and rights to get onto property, things get a little more complicated. If that were to occur, it'd be 2026. In preparation, we're going to have the Main Avenue utility relay by the city of De Pere in 2027, and then the big one, which is Main Avenue Reconstruction, in 2028. I'm going to elaborate on those 2 other projects here. So 2027, utility relay. The year prior to the WSDOT big project in 2028, the city needs to come out here and redo our utilities. Now, for those of you who have been in the area for a while, it would be similar to 8th Street in the 2016, 2017 timeframe. In 2016, we did our utility work. We put temporary asphalt patches down. In fact, I can still show you on Dime what it looked like after we were done, our aerial maps. And then Wistock came in the year before. So on this project, you can see here's the area on Main that's impacted by the alley behind it. But in front, that's where your water main comes from. So we are proposing there's curb stops, little metal caps for each of your buildings that is out in the brick area. We are proposing to relay those in 2027 to get into your building. And there'll be quite a few meetings on that separately, because we will want to work with your plumber to get that water service into your building so you don't have to deal with leaks or things like that in the future. But with that being said, during that time frame, there's going to be impacts to traffic. There's going to be impacts to people accessing your buildings, particularly when we're digging into these buildings. Now, this project goes from the bridge all the way to 8th Street. So there'll be a lot of time that we're not working in front of your building, but you can see there's quite a few services on this block. So there will be impacts in 2027. And then additionally, as we get farther down, closer to 8th Street, we are going to have sanitary laterals that are relayed, but again, not in front of your properties, because your properties are all serviced by this green sanitary sewer behind, which we're hoping to address the laterals with this alley project. Then comes the big one, 2028. And there's two different scopes to the DOT project. The area in blue, and that encompasses at least half of your block, is going to be a significant impact. Basically, we're looking for pavement replacement, decorative concrete, or whatever the city and community members come up with, and sidewalk replacement from building face to building face, which will make access into buildings very difficult during that time. And this project is going to take the entire summer, I would anticipate. Then there is a purple area or pink area, depending on what color preference you have. I guess it's more pink, but that's going to be more of a pavement rehab, because that concrete is newer and was constructed kind of with the bridge and some of that time frame. So there will not be as extensive work there, although I'm not sure what's going to happen with the sidewalk, because I don't know that the city's going to necessarily put brick in, and we'll want to have the sidewalk and the furniture zone, which is where the brick is, matched throughout. So really, this will be a big impact. And that's one of the things we would like you as businesses to think about, and property owners, when we start discussing what we're doing in the alley. And, are there times during this time frame in 2028 that you're going to want to see people accessing your buildings from the back? And I should take a step back, because again, when we start talking amenities and things like that, a project like this can get really expensive in a hurry. And so the decisions that are made from, how elaborate or big this project gets will be things that you'll have to, that'll have to be worked out through the elected officials, depending on where this goes. And after this meeting, we will again be requesting input from all of you out there on what you see for your business, your property, and what you'd like to see, and things like that. So we are going to be looking for input, and I'll talk about that more. But again, please keep this on your radar. There will be separate public information meetings. We really don't know what the construction staging and traffic control plans are at this point. There's going to be a lot of impacts. So, keep that in mind when you're thinking about this project. So that is the overall timing. And again, just a step back, the alley could be 25 or 26, depending on what the amenities are. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Quason to talk about some of the other assistance things and other opportunities that the city has.
Thank you. My name is Quason Shaw with the Development Services Department with the City of De Pere. One of the assistance programs that we have is our Brownfields program. Earlier this year, the City of De Pere Development Services Department put together a request for proposal, or an RFP, to contract with environmental consulting services groups, basically just to create a Brownsfield program for us. So with the Brownsfield program, we're looking at like contaminated sites, soils, things of that nature. So one of the things we looked at creating the Brownsfield program is to assist the city. We have I don't want to say a bunch, but we have several properties throughout the city that we are looking to remediate. And with this, we're creating our Brownsfield program that will allow us to provide services for property owners to look into if you're looking to do a phase 1 or phase 2 environmental assessment. One of the things with our Brownsville program, we will create a steering committee to help us guide us in how we're going to determine the Brownsville program. So we're working with a consultant, Stantec. They're actually on Turing Road. Yep. So they're here in the city, so they'll be providing the services with us. So in that aspect, we'll be looking at doing remedial action plans, phase 1, phase 2, looking at assessments and different properties and things of that nature. But for the public, we will be creating our Brownsville program. So we're looking at like a steering committee for business owners, property owners, community residents to be part of that, to help guide us as to how we want our program to look like. And here on the screen, you can see an example of a Brownsville program project that we looked at. So looking at the cobblestone hotel there, so looking at cleaning up that property. So you see like the before and after, where it's just a vacant parking lot there. And then now you have the hotel standing there. So that's one program that we have here with the city.
Got a little excited. Double hit that enter button. Sorry.
That's okay. And the other one is our facade grant program. So with the facade grants, basically we are looking to support the rehabilitation and renovation of exterior buildings, facades in the downtown here in the city. With our grant program, we provide a 1-to-1 match. So for every dollar you spend of private funds, the city matches you $1 up to $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, depending on your building width. So grant is determined by the length of the building, measured along the total linear footage of the adjacent public right-of-way, up to $30,000 per property. So if you look at here on the screen with our guidelines, building width from 1 foot to 60 feet, you're looking at $10,000 that the city will give to you, granted that you put in $10,000 as well. 61 feet to 120 feet, 20,000. Then anything over 121 feet qualifies for the 30,000 facade grant there from the city. In this program, you will have to have a couple meetings. You will go before the RDA. You'll work with us at the Development Services Department. We'll walk you through what the guidelines and things that are. We'll help you get your application and everything together. Then we'll have to present that to the Redevelopment Authority. They're the ones who administer this grant. And then ultimate approval with the Common Council with the City of De Pere. But here are some of the eligible expenses and ineligible expenses as well. So with the eligible expenses, we have 16 eligible expenses there. And then also with the ineligible expenses, I'll go through the ineligible ones. So you can't use it for signage or any standalone requests, any improvement that could be removed from the building, such as personal property. You can't use it for security cameras, interior improvements. You can't use it for design, engineering, or professional fees. And also you cannot use it for roof repair, replacement, or anything that does not alter the appearance of the building. And also, if you look at the picture up here, this was actually 409 Main Avenue. So on the left hand, you'll see the before picture, and on the right hand side, you'll see the after picture. This was one of the facade grants that was recently brought before the RDA for approval, and then actually for completed, that they completed as well. So you just see the different contrast between the before and after pictures there, utilizing the facade grants that we have.
All right. Thanks, Grayson. I appreciate it. All right. So what I'm going to do really now, this is the point where we're looking for some project discussion. And I kind of talked about it a couple times already. Some of the questions we have for you, and we can talk about it now, open it up. I'm going to give you information. In fact, I'll scroll to the next slide after we get through this so you can see our contact information so you can write it down. But we're looking for, how do you use the alley currently? What improvements does your business, excuse my typo, building need from this project? And, Quayson gave us some good information about some of the exterior improvements. Are you looking for things like that? Are you changing your building use? Are you going to use the back entrance? And again, next question, do you anticipate back entrance access for your customers, particularly during that 2028 construction project? Do you plan to add backdoor seating? Another thing that would be important to know. And then, are you planning any improvements to your property business near the alley? So those are, and that can be asphalt, parking, things like that. So those are all questions we have. Now, I'm going to leave this up. I think I'm going to pop out of the main screen here, but hopefully I can leave that up so you can still see it. And we will open it up for any questions, comments. So do we have any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions or comments. We're lucky in both buildings because we do have rear access and we've used them on both sides. The 320 building is tenant spaces and they can access. They can also send their clients through that access, so I don't think that'll be an issue. There's elevator access too, so it's all ADA compliant. On the other side, it's not a big deal to lock the front door and then just keep people routed to the back entrance for that period.
So they can use your back entrance right now? Okay.
Yep. The back entrance is in Nicolay Square at the 355 building.
Okay.
And 320 has about 7 to 8 stalls back there.
If I had to guess, I'd say 8. It might be 10, just depending on who's parking and, you know,
How awkward they park.
Exactly. I've seen it all.
Okay. Well, I think that's all we have for people, but we appreciate you being here. And for those of you, hopefully somebody watches this online. That would be great. But we will get it on our website, which is where you would access it. But if you have any questions, here's your contacts. For really engineering related questions related to construction, please reach out to me. If you have facade grant or brownfields questions, reach out to Quason. If you have development in general questions, Dan Lindstrom is the head of the development services. And then dumpster enclosure questions, please reach out to Scott. Any other miscellaneous that you're not sure about, please feel free to contact me and I will get the proper people involved.